Cerebral Lights, I bring forth to the discussion stacked off-ball linebacker Ben VanSumeren. Can he defy the odds and not only make the Eagles' initial 53-man roster, but can he be developed into a key contributor? All right, guys, not me, break. When it comes to the 53-man roster, I'm a sucker for trait-based players, the long shots to make the roster, but have this intriguing upside that maybe you want to hold on to and protect against other teams. As it pertains to Ben VanSumeren, I really have 4 words for you that will describe my interest here. Athletic-based testing traits. There are very few athletes who are better than Ben VanSumeren when it comes to these testing numbers at off-ball linebacker. You've heard that figurative saying, oh, that dude can jump out of the gym. Well, I present into evidence for you Ben VanSumeren's Michigan State workout when he clears the vert bar and has to re-jump again. This young man had a 4.40 time at his pro day, and Draft Scout reported this young man as having a 1.52-10 split, 131-inch or 10'11" broad jump, and then a 42.5-inch vertical. You guys have heard me say this quite a few times, that the way I like to judge explosion from the raw talent of the player is show me the 10 split, show me what they're jumping in the vertical, and then show me what they did in the broad jump, because that tells me that this is an explosive player or not, regardless of what the total 40 time is. It tells me if they're kind of twitchy and explosive. And that's what Ben VanSumeren is from the linebacker spot. He's twitchy, he's explosive, he's bigger than you think, he's like 6'2", 6'3"-ish, just under 240 pounds at his pro day. He measured in at 237 pounds, and he's strong. I know that there's not a lot of data to support 29 bench reps translating to NFL play strength, but I mean, you're still pretty dang strong, guys, if you're throwing up 29 reps on the bench at the linebacker spot. It's a tough young man. It's a young man that's got some strength, if you will. In addition to that, he's got some fluidity in his hips with a 7'1" 3-cone. But, and I do think this is the larger looming issue with this player, there was one downside, guys, and that was the 4.46 short shuttle that he put up, which I do think is a very pertinent lateral drill for linebackers. It's definitely something that you want to see that because it insinuates footwork. A guy this athletic running a number, putting up a number like a 4.46, probably taking too many steps, which means this is a young man who needs further development. But all those intriguing raw data points are there from an athletic testing traits standpoint.
Hey, yo, Steve, hold up a minute. Are you really trying to sell us here in Philadelphia on a dude that might perform well in shorts and a t-shirt on a practice field, but yet we don't know what this dude's going to look like inside of a football game?
Well, if I'm being honest, look, guys, I mean, he started off as being a running back at Michigan, hung in at a really good program for a couple of years and transferred out to Michigan State. And then when he got to Michigan State, we start to see kind of that development of playing a little bit more off-ball stacked linebacker. So he's definitely raw. I mean, there's definitely like a learning curve that had to happen. And that's why you didn't hear me really mention his name too much last year, because I knew a lot of development was going to have to take place. I just feel like now that he's got a year inside the league and he's got a chance to see the game speed, now we might be able to see if some of that raw athleticism can come into play and maybe mess some things up here.
Okay. What is the likelihood that this guy can actually make the roster? I mean, what evidence can you point to? Like, what players can you name that have beaten this kind of rap before? I mean, how likely is this to occur, Steve, if we're going to be honest about the situation?
This is a long shot gamble. I'm not going to deny that. However, I will point out, you got a guy who's going to play at the edge this year in Bryce Huff, who's an undrafted free agent, who is very much an athletic traits-based player, right? You have a guy who's your starting left tackle right now who's never, before arriving here in the States, never played a down of organized football a day in his life, who was just an athletic traits-based left tackle. Dude that you just don't see come through the league in terms of the athletics on this guy and the size, right? You have a guy we just spent a third-round pick on, just barely squeezed him into the top 100 there, in Jalix Hunt, who is not overly experienced playing as an edge rusher. However, this young man is very much not only a physical trait, so the height, the arms, the measurables, all that type of stuff, but he's also an athletics trait-based player as well. So, I mean, there are examples. Even the young man, John Ross, who was a former first-round pick that we just kind of signed after he had a tryout basis with the Eagles a week or so ago. I mean, look, that's another young man that is an athletic traits base, right? It's the intriguing aspect to him is that speed element, if you will. So there are players where we have taken these type of gambles before where it's worked out. And, of course, there's been players to where it was much ado about nothing. I mean, they were athletically gifted, they were great athletes, and just weren't great football players. Time will tell on this player.
See, right there, Steve. In your own words, you just called him a long shot gamble. So I have a question to ask you. With a depth chart that's going to include Nakobe Dean, it's going to include Devin White, it's going to include Zach Bond, it's going to include Orion Burks, and it's going to include our 5th-round draft pick and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Why this one? Why this long shot? Why are you taking the chance on this player? Why are you stepping out on a limb for this particular player and not somebody else? Like, what can you present that makes you think like, oh, this is a guy that we might go deep and carry 6, or he might beat out a guy if we only keep 5? Why this particular player, Steve? I have to ask it.
A couple of things crossed my radar about Ben VanSumeren that kind of changed my mind about, look, maybe the athletic traits are going to pan out for this young man. The first thing is you got to go back to last year's preseason game against the Colts, where this guy had like 17 total tackles, guys. And I know that total tackles are not always actually a good thing, right? Especially when they're that high, because it can mean the guys are climbing to the second level. So the average depth of tackle is going to matter. You want to be within that 3-yard range, or else dudes are climbing to the second level. But with that said, I've watched this argument play out one time before, which cost us to lose a really good linebacker, and Alex Singleton. Alex Singleton's been really good since he left Philadelphia. He was another one of these guys who was always around the ball, always had a lot of tackles when he was in games. But ultimately, people kept saying, like, oh, it's because people are climbing to the second level and all those things, and it come to turn out, like, Alex Singleton would have been a good player for the Eagles. That's the kind of vibe I get from Ben VanSumeren, and I don't want to lose that. And then to kind of put the exclamation point on that is when he got his first start in Week 16, he was the 6th highest graded linebacker during Week 16. And I know you can say subjective, Steve, very subjective, and it is, but it's also impartial. It's not my opinion. It's a group of other guys' opinion from PFF that are giving him that rating based upon his performance for that game. I mean, and he was up there with guys like Jack Campbell he was ahead of, Landon Robertson he was ahead of. I mean, he was up there pretty high. Devin White, I think, was the highest graded guy in Week 16, ironically. This young man definitely had a performance when he was given the opportunity. Like, the athleticism, it was showing up a little bit. Now, I will tell you, he's raw in coverage, and we saw that play out in Week 17. He got abused in his little bit of a snaps there in terms of playing in coverage. He's got to progress. He's got to get better in coverage to be like a real, true contributor. But with that said, the new kickoff rule is another thing you have to focus on, guys. That new kickoff rule means that these dudes like Ben VanSumeren, who are incredible athletes with a little size, who can bring a little attitude and a little punishment to the special teams play, I think it kind of enhances their ability to hang on a roster. I think that could definitely be something that kind of keeps him around. All right, guys. I appreciate y'all. Let me know what you think about Ben VanSumeren. If you want to see further breakdowns from me, look over here. I got a video linked for you. And if you enjoyed today's content and you want to join the Cerebral Football community, right there, click that and you can join, guys. All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out of here.